Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, Joellyn Cicciarelli. Joellyn Cicciarelli is the president and publisher of Loyola Press and its imprint for 𝑈2B Books and Media. She brings deep senior-level leadership experience with a proven ability to set vision and strategy, collaborate with boards, and oversee daily operations. She is known for her self-driven and goal-oriented style. Joellyn leads by example, building efficient processes, motivating teams through collaboration, and consistently delivering results that provide strong ROI. Her leadership is grounded in Jesuit values, aligning organizational goals with Loyola Press's mission, while fostering a culture of engagement, encouragement, and purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, today on the Lead Different podcast, I am very glad to welcome Joellyn Cicciarelli. Welcome, Joellyn. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here, Joellyn. This is an interview I've been looking forward to because we had a 20-minute phone call that turned into a 30-minute phone call. We were introduced by Julianne Stans. And, a couple of things that came up immediately. She said, Dan, she's very busy. I'll do my best to connect you with her. And we were able to connect within a week. So thank you for your generosity of time. And then again, I took an extra 10 minutes from our scheduled time, and you were so generous with your time that day. I know it's a big job running Loyola Press, and I know you've probably got a lot of important things you're doing. So on behalf of Why Not Leadership and the Lead Different podcast and our listeners, we want to thank you for being so generous and for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. This is wonderful.
Well, I'm going to bring something up you brought up during the pre-show. We talked about, I said, Joellyn, do you have a hard stop? And I would love to hear about the concept of, what did you call it, an open week?
We call it a quiet week.
A quiet week. So tell us what a quiet week looks like. As the CEO and the leader of Loyola Press, is this something you established? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. We established Quiet Week 2 years ago. We are a very, very busy organization, developing books and media for schools, parishes, and individuals of all ages, and have several divisions. And what we learned was that people really relished time for deep work, time alone to accomplish tasks. And because we're a very collaborative culture, we decided that it would be good to establish a quiet week 3 times a year. You'll notice that this summer quiet week happens to be when a lot of folks are taking their kids back to school, either moving them into college or high school, and elementary schools are starting. So we also try to position the quiet weeks when people might have to sneak away, so that they can be present for their families too. So 3 times a year, we ask everyone to cancel all their meetings that are internal. We ask that everybody plans for this quiet week to get deep work done. And we find that it's restorative and refreshing and takes pressure off from folks.
I have a small team, so we don't meet very often, once or twice a week, but it's really easy when there's only 4 of us. Is this something that you guys practice company-wide?
We do. So we have almost 100 employees. So 3 times a year, everyone's invited to kind of go dark. We still email and send documents back and forth, but we invite people to really take that time to do planning work they might not have time to do. Our
Right.
accounting team really digs in. Yeah, we strategically plan it, and people know it's coming. And so
Right.
a lot of times they can save that quiet work for that
Hmm.
time.
That's great. And it's 3 times a year for a
Correct.
whole week. So 3 weeks, 3 out of 52.
3 out of 52.
Wow. That is such a great concept. And leaders out there, I hope you're taking notes. Let me ask you the question that I know is going to come up from leaders. You mentioned that, you plan them around times that people might be busy with family, like this is back to school week. How have you found that leaders and employees respond to that kind of freedom without it becoming oh, I just stayed home with my kids all week and I ran a bunch of errands for myself. But it sounds like a very productive time. So I guess the question is, how have you guys kept it a productive week that doesn't become just about that, but giving people that flexibility? I have a feeling you guys have that flexibility year round. It just is emphasized during this week.
It's emphasized during this week. There is some flexibility because we do have a hybrid work environment. People are in the office 2 days a week. The first day with their full team, and then the second day with the team they work most closely with that's outside of their department. And then 3 days home. So we do have that. But one of the things that I think keeps us on track, we have a PMO department, a project management office. We call it OPPM, Office of Program and Project Management. And so we have project managers that are holding us accountable to our deadlines, and to all of our commitments inside and outside of the organization. So, because we have a very well organized PMO, um, and our projects, regardless of whether they're product related or not, even our work research projects, for example, have a project manager that really keeps everybody on task. Um, we're also a very, very mission oriented organization. And working at Loyola Press, you learn very quickly that everybody has an eagle eye on the mission. So we have a lot of really hard workers just because they believe so much in the mission of Loyola Press. So I would say those are the two reasons why we really don't have trouble with productivity at all.
Yeah, I've heard it said if you take care of people, the work takes care of itself, right? And it sounds that's such a people first approach to allow people the opportunity to do that deep work, because I know for me, and unfortunately, deep work weeks probably wouldn't work so well for me because I tend to be flit from one thing to another. So I try to put my deep work in 45 to 1 hour sprints, and I guess I could do that for a full day. I don't know if I could do it for a full week. That now you've challenged me, Joelle.
Right.
Uh, I have a weekly, Nikki and I, my COO and I meet once a week on Tuesdays, and that's our creation day. We create, that's where we put off all the stuff, new curriculum we want to put out, or a new program we want to try, new presentations we want to do. But I like the idea of a week. So I'll let you know if we decide to try it out at Why Not Leadership.
Sure, that's great. Yeah, we have a strong one-on-one culture as well at Loyola Press
Hmm.
too. So every supervisor meets with their reports once a week for one-on-one time. I think it's really important to stay connected and
Right.
have that personal time together.
Absolutely. So speaking of how you handle leadership, one of the things you and I connected on, and I think that's why we ran over on time in our first meeting, we talked about the importance of self-awareness and servant leadership. So Loyola Press is the publisher of one of my favorite leadership books, Heroic Leadership. We actually had Chris Lowney on the show on Friday, August 15th. So we just aired his episode, and it was, it's one of those moments. This was the first real, and I guess it's not the first leadership book I ever read. It's the first leadership book I read when I was in an actual leadership position. So I'd come out of the military. I'm leading a sales force, and my mentor, Father Edmundo Rodriguez, God rest his soul, he's no longer with us. He was my golf partner and friend and mentor. he said, Dan, have you read Chris's book? And it had been published recently. And as a matter of fact, I think my bookmark is the receipt from when he bought it for me. And he said, you got to read it. And of course, we talk about self-awareness. That's the first pillar of Jesuit leadership, and understanding your strengths, weaknesses, values, and worldview. That's also the very thing that I lead with everyone that I work with on becoming a better leader. Would it be okay if we talked about the four pillars really quickly, and
Absolutely.
how you use them? So tell me about self-awareness. And we just, by the way, those of you that are listening, the coaches and or people who know their YOS, we took Joellyn's, she took the YOS over the weekend, and we have her results, and we'll share them later. But tell us how you implement self-awareness into your leadership style.
So I learned very early in my leadership career. I had a wonderful mentor and boss, Tom McGrath, and he told me, Joellyn, leadership is an inside job. And I thought, okay, what does he mean by that? He said, well, I'll tell you what I mean by that. And it was all about self-awareness. So for me, I know that how I portray myself and and I have to be authentic, by the way. That's very important to me. Authenticity is very important. But how I authentically portray myself to the people we serve, to my staff, to my family, really, really matters. And so you have to work on your own challenges and illuminate your own gifts in order to be able to be a good leader. I suspected we were going to talk about this today, so I have on my wall in my office 5 questions that I ask myself when I'm trying to work through a problem, and they really kind of deal with self-awareness. So I'll tell you kind of what they are. One of the questions I always ask is, what are the net consequences? In other words, what are all the options, all the related consequences? Who is affected and how? And if I decide that I'm the only one affected, then I'm probably not looking at the problem in the right way. And I need to be more other-centered.
Right.
A second question I ask myself is, what are my core obligations? I think that's really important. What will work in the world as it is? Who am I and what do I stand for? And who are we and what do we stand for? And then, is the final decision something I can live with or something we can live with? And so those are the questions I ask myself that lead me back to asking, what are my motives? What am I really trying to accomplish? And is it the right thing to do?
That is really good. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to ask you to expand a little bit on that, because you know what, this is a good time as any to talk about your why of make sense. So that sounds like, when you take all those questions, does this make sense to do, right? If you ask all those questions, you're going to get to, hey, is this a good decision for the organization, for Joellyn, for the people involved? It reminds me, oh gosh, I was a Rotarian for many, many, many years, and they always ask the question, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it bring goodwill and better friendships? And will it be fair to all concerned? So when I look at your 5 discernment questions, I love that they almost kind of match up to the 4 that the Rotarians always ask, because we always want to make sure that it's not only good, as you said, not just good for Joellyn, it's good for everyone.
Right.
If it's only impacting Joellyn, are we asking all the right questions, which is fantastic. So, okay, viewers, we're going to give you the, let's get the lowdown on Joellyn so that you guys can know who she is based on the YOS discovery. So her why came back as make sense. And you guys could probably tell just from our conversation already, she's a problem solver. She is someone who can look at information and come up with solutions quickly. Even those 5 questions are meant to kind of distill the problem, right? So make sense is her why. Her how is to challenge the status quo. So Joellyn, and we talked pre-show, is someone who's not afraid to uh, stir the pot a little and ask the question, why do we have to do it that way? Especially if there's a better or different way of doing something that's going to be more efficient, that's going to answer the question that's ultimately important: is it good for everyone concerned? And her what came back as trust. So we know that Joellyn is someone for whom trust is very important. And you talked about authenticity, which is another thing that, when we talked about the what of trust, you said that's a big part of how you deal with your direct reports. And I think it's very important. I think a lot of us, we've all been exposed to a workplace where the boss comes in and leaves, and you say, I wonder what he thinks about my idea, or what she thinks about so and so. You like to not let it be a guessing game. People always know. Tell us a little bit about authenticity, and the other very important word you mentioned was transparency. Tell us about how that works, and then we'll get back to the second, because it goes so well with your how of challenge, ingenuity, the second pillar. But tell us a little bit about authenticity and transparency.
Sure. So, I have a leadership team that is consists of my CFO, CAO, my vice president of marketing and sales, and my vice president of new product development. Also working with us in executive capacity is our director of mission and identity. And we are sort of the core leadership team at Loyola Press. Um, when I came into the role, I told the team that our goal is to be as transparent um, and trustworthy with the staff as possible.
Mhm.
So we are going to tell people as much as we can, as early as we can, whether it's good news, bad news, whatever it is, we're going to be transparent. We're not going to be afraid to celebrate. I
Mhm.
think often organizations miss out on celebrating, celebrating the wins, celebrating each other, celebrating the hard work we do together. But we're also going to be really honest and open and trustworthy when it comes to sharing challenging news. So that's sort of how I set up my team, and it's serving us very well.
And tell me, let's talk about how that relates to you. And sorry, I'm off camera here. Let's tell us how that relates to how things get done. So when we're, I always like to say, I don't want people asking questions, because if people don't know where they stand, they're going to have back office conversations, or behind water cooler conversations. How does that impact the productivity? How do you think it impacts the productivity?
Oh, I think it creates open lines of communication, and it creates no one's afraid to come into my office. I'll tell you that. It doesn't matter what level of the company you are, they will come in, and it opens up dialogue, it creates trust, it breaks down silos. We worked really hard to break down departmental silos, and I think we've done a good job. Two things that we do, we have two divisions at Loyola Press. We have a trade division that builds materials for individuals, children through adults, and then we also have a curriculum division that builds materials for schools and parishes. And each week we have a meeting that brings all the stakeholders together, for one for trade and one for curriculum. And everyone's in the room. So the print buyer's in the room, and the accounting director's in the room, and the director of marketing's in the room, and the editors are in the room. And we not only walk through our schedules, but each group or person is invited to um, submit topics
Mhm.
to discuss together as a group. And we have these meetings every week without fail. And everyone every week walks away learning something, but also problem solving when we can. But we've learned to really do a really good job of saying, okay, this sounds like it's a deeper conversation for a smaller group of stakeholders. You guys pull together a working session and come back next week and tell us how you solved it. So we've got this nice system going that really works well for us.
I like that. We've all been in those meetings where we're trying to boil the ocean, right? And then we got, and you're like, this affects that one department. Why are we all in this meeting, right? And I love that. You just break it away and say, hey, how about you guys take it back, bring it back, bring us the solution or what you decide to do. Fantastic. Great leadership example. Let's talk about the second pillar, which I think, as I said, ingenuity. I fell in love with that second pillar of Jesuit leadership because being a fellow challenger, I like to do things different and outside the box. The Jesuits broke the mold, right? Before the Jesuits were around, people came to them. People came to the church, came to the monasteries. The Jesuits are the first one that said, hey, let's put on our shoes and let's go around the world and bring Christianity to the world. So they're very Ignatian to go out and be different and innovate. How is it that you apply that principle of ingenuity?
That's a great question. I think giving a concrete example might be the best way to share. I'll share a story. When I came into Loyola Press, I was director of curricula development. So I was running the division that makes all the curriculum materials. And I received a submission, if you could call it that, one Monday. One of our folks came in and he said, I was at a wedding this weekend and someone gave this to me and said, you might want to look at it. There are materials that they've made for their daughter with autism so that she could receive her first communion. And there aren't any materials out there for children with special needs. And children are being, turned away from making that sacrament because they can't meet the requirements. So I look at this envelope, I dump it on my table. It's Velcro, little pieces of pieces and parts, but I see the beauty of it and I see that it could be something amazing and I see that it's the right thing to do. So I went to the leaders that be and I pled my case. They were in leadership at the time at Loyola Press. And they said, well, we don't get it. We don't see it. And I said, okay. So they said, but if you can go away and you can let us know, give us some data that there are children in the church with disabilities that need to be served, just give me that challenge. And then also, if you can show us how these materials could look and work, then perhaps we'll consider it. So I took their challenge and I went away after being told no. And it took me a little while, but I made some good friends at the National Catholic Partnership on Disability. And I worked secretly with my art director and we developed some prototypes. And I am thrilled and so proud to say that Loyola Press brought that vision to life. We now have materials for all three sacraments in English and Spanish, but then we did one better. And Loyola Press is the only publisher in the world that has developed a full faith formation program for children with disabilities that is integrated with a faith formation program for typically developing children, so that all children at a parish or in a Catholic school can learn with the same materials. And
if
that's
I'm
the
hearing
story.
you correctly, so you developed the curriculum. First of all, congratulations and thank you for doing the right thing, because the right thing is the right thing, even if nobody's doing it, right? And wrong, right is right, even if even if nobody's doing it, and wrong is wrong, even if everybody's doing it. I love that you said, hey, it's the right thing to do. We're going to look into it, even if we've never done it before. But what I really like is you integrated it with the regular curriculum or with the traditional curriculum so that those kids don't have to be separated. They can be in the same class, same room, and learning from the same teacher. You've just made it easier for them to be able to instruct them.
Exactly. So I'll give you an example. Let's say first grade, Book of Genesis, you're learning that God created the world.
Right.
So in the typically developing portion of the lesson, the children are reading, they might be drawing pictures, but our adaptation for that lesson is that we invite the teachers to bring in a bouquet of flowers, and we invite them to give a flower to each child.
Mm.
And then we invite all the children to touch the flower and smell the flower and look at the flower, and then ceremoniously come back and put the flowers in the vase. And as they're doing that, the teacher is talking about God created plants, God created you and me, God. So you're bringing the lesson alive.
Right.
So what's so amazing is, and works really well. I'm a former teacher, so I like to talk about these things. What works for typically developing children doesn't always work for children with disabilities, but often what works for children with disabilities works really well for everyone. And so we've found a way to create an inclusive program. And that's one example of ingenuity and taking on a challenge and thinking outside of the box and making it happen.
And I'm sure there are probably quite a few examples of you doing that. You mentioned your background. I think it's important to bring that up because one of the things that's inspiring about your story, Joellyn, is you're a former educator. So you were a second through fifth grade teacher, teacher of the year in a California school system some time ago. But then that led to an opportunity, and I definitely want to talk about you. You got into publishing, and you had this just no name guy that was kind of one of your early clients, guy nobody knows. Tell us about that experience.
Sure. So I was a staff editor at a wonderful company called Creative Teaching Press. And my boss came in one day and said, "We have an opportunity to do a book series with Mr. Rogers. And I am going to give you all a challenge." And there were four editors at the time. Each of you are going to create a pitch for Mr. Rogers. And y- I will take a look at them and I will choose the one that I think has the most legs. And then we're going to be flying to Pittsburgh to pitch it to um, the neighborhood. I'm still friends with the neighborhood. It's called the Fred Rogers Company now, but back in the day it was called Family Communications. So I watched every episode I could, and I came up with a concept called Grow and Learn with Mr. Rogers. And I was the one chosen from my team. And I went to Pittsburgh with my boss, and we pitched the book series. And after a couple of meetings, we were able to sign a deal with him. And I was his editor for 2 years developing this program. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. I can tell you one story because he taught me a lot about leadership, and that's what we're talking about sort of today. And this really goes to the idea of servant leadership. I was on set the very first time in the land of make believe, and I had a Kodak disposable camera because it was before cell phones. And I asked Mr. Rogers, I was on set, if I could have my picture taken with him. And he said to me, "Joellyn, I would love to do that, but I would like to take your picture with them first." And I turned around and it was the key grip and the camera guy and the caterer and the intern. And he said, "Those are the people who do the real work around here." And he took my camera and he placed me near these folks, and he took my photo. And then when he was done, he handed the camera to one of the guys and he said, "And now I would love to have my picture taken with you." And he took my picture with him. It was a memory I'll never ever forget. He was exactly the same in real life as he was on TV, and he taught me so much over the 2 years that I got to spend time with him.
What an amazing opportunity and what a great reframe. A lot of people talk, a lot of bosses talk about putting their people first. But, I always say it's not what you say, it's what you do. And for him to take that opportunity to say, "Hey, I know you want a picture with me, but I want to make sure you have a picture of the people who make this happen." and then he took that picture, and then even the way he said it, and now I'd like for to take a picture with you, not for you to have a picture with me. It was, I would like to have a picture with you. Those words are so important, and I wish we could probably spend a show talking about that. But that does lead us to the third pillar of Jesuit leadership, which is love. To engage others with a positive attitude that unlocks their potential. And I've seen a little bit of that already, but that's a word that's not, people get uncomfortable with the word love in the workplace, because of course we saw the recent scandal with the tech CEO and his HR director or VP. That's not the kind of love we're talking. We're talking about engaging people with a positive attitude, loving them enough to help them develop their gifts. What is that? What does that principle mean to you, and how do you apply it in the work you do as a leader?
Absolutely. So I think love of the people you serve is very, very important. And we have a mandate to try to serve people on the margins and on the peripheries, people who don't feel loved or lovable, and then people who don't feel valued or valuable. It's our job to love them and to show them they are loved and to show them they are valuable. That's the driving force really for me in my role. And then also as a staff, it's really important, to have fraternal love, to love your brother, to love your sister, um, to love your work, because it is serving those people. And then also, I do think it's important to make sure that folks are taking good care of themselves, loving themselves, and having that work-life balance really is important. If my mission proclaims to be one that is, we're a Catholic institution.
Mhm.
Family is number one, so it's incumbent upon me to allow my staff members to have time to be with family and to show them the love that they deserve as well. So um, love is our driver, love is our goal, love is our force. Um, it means everything.
Right. That brings us back to John 15:13, right? No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And I don't think we're talking about where you're going to lay down your life at work, but just to put others ahead of yourself.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that is our life, our livelihood, right? And in a place where there isn't love, there is a lot of backstabbing and posturing for the boss, and trying to make yourself look better. Jocko Willink is one of my favorite authors. He wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he talks about when people take ownership. It's great when something goes wrong and everybody in the room is trying to say, "Wait, it was my fault." That is so much better than when everyone in the room is pointing at someone else. Wait, it's their fault. It's their fault. When you take the time to just really say, what could I have done differently or better so that the mission hadn't failed? And of course, as a Navy SEAL, the example he uses was one of friendly fire, where a friendly troop was killed in an engagement, and he was the commander. And what I'm hearing from you is when you make it your mission, when you put love in there, love of oneself, and I think it has to be there if you're going to be a servant leader. You can't be a servant leader if you don't have love for the people you lead. So thank you for that example. Let's go back because we didn't really finish. So we talked about Fred Rogers,
Hmm.
but you started out as an educator. How do you make the leap? I mean, how do we go from second grade teacher to CEO of one of the largest publishing companies in the world?
So that it is a great question. People ask me that a lot. So luckily, I do have that gift of challenge, because otherwise, I don't think I would have been brave enough to take the leap. Um, so so I think um, i- in in the book The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about the two things that are sort of required for success. One is opportunity, And then the second is being brave enough to go for it and take that opportunity. So when I look at moving into publishing from teaching, I think those two things came into play. The first thing was it was almost necessity. My husband traveled, we moved around the country a lot for his job, and there was no reciprocity with teaching certificates back then in the United States. So every time we moved, I would have to take more tests, take more classes, and there was a barrier to getting a job. It was just very challenging. So I decided that if I were going to continue, I needed to find a job that would move with me. And it was just teaching was very difficult because of our moves. The second thing is there was opportunity, and I recognized that. I knew that I had a gift for making lessons come alive for the kids. I was kind of a precocious child and a little
Mhm.
bored. And when I had a great teacher that brought the lessons alive, I paid a lot more attention and I learned a lot more. And I wanted to be that for kids. So I was pretty good at taking what was boring and really making it fun. I could
Mhm.
tell you some of the cool things I did, but it helped me get Teacher of the Year for sure. And so I had this opportunity. I saw an ad in the paper back when there were jobs in newspapers for an editor position at Creative Teaching Press, and they were willing to look at teachers who were currently teaching but ready to move. So even more than editorial experience, they needed people who were good lesson makers and good teachers. So I saw that opportunity, and then I was brave enough to apply. And when I applied, I didn't just send my resume in. I sent 3 lesson plans in with the original lessons that were included in the textbook to show how I tweaked them to make them much more engaging and interesting and useful. And so I think by sending the samples in, I think it kind of gave me an edge because I went the extra mile. So I would say though those are the things that sort of had me make the leap and why it worked.
So that helps us get to how you ended up in publishing, but now you've taken there's a few steps between, being the editor for Fred Rogers and being the CEO of Loyola Press. What's been consistent? And you know what? Let's put it in this context because I think it'll be helpful. What are some of the ways that you've what are some of the problems you've solved? Because I know that
Hmm.
you're probably famous for being brought in as someone who's, hey, here's somebody that's going to solve that problem. Here's somebody that's not going to be afraid to do it differently, and here's somebody that we can trust. What are some of the lessons along the way, or the steps you took that led to the ultimately to the role that you're in right now?
Sure. Okay, so some of this may be a little challenging to talk about. It's digging a little deep, but I'm happy to do that. And I'm going to speak from a woman's perspective as well. So when I had children, it was very important for me to try to stay home with them.
Mm.
And so but I did not want to give up my career. So long before it was cool or a thing to work from home, I just chose to sort of, in a way, devote myself and go out on my own and become a freelancer. But I wasn't demoted for long. So I started to reach out to people I knew in the industry, and they would hire me to come in and do either I would be a writer or an editor, or sometimes I would come in to do creative ideation with teams. So consulting, kind of before consulting was as a career as well. And I would kind of be a hired gun. And I sort of, because of my connections with Mr. Rogers too, my name was kind of out there as someone who knew how to do things. I was approached in 2000 to become an author of a preschool curriculum. And they would allow me to work from home while I was working with a co author and a team to develop the curriculum. So my career then moved there, and I spent 5 years. And I'm still the author of this curriculum. It's still in print today. Actually, I got a royalty check last week, which felt pretty good. And I was in that role from 2000 to 2005. And during that time, because I was a freelancer and able to kind of work different places, I started consulting for Loyola Press, and I would come in and help them ideate new products. And in 2005, I was at kind of a critical place. Well, it was actually 2008, right before the recession. I was at a critical place in my life where I knew my children were older. I knew I was ready to sort of dip my foot back in the water, potentially in a leadership role. And I had been offered a position to still work from home for a major publisher as a manager. And I called my mentor at Loyola Press, who had kind of become a friend over the years of consulting. And I said, I don't know what to do. Do I leave my authorship and go in? And she said, don't do anything for 2 weeks and have dinner with me Friday night. And I said, okay. So um, I had dinner with her, and she said, I would really love to have you come in as our director of curricular development and join the leadership team at Loyola Press. So I think some of the things that contributed to my success, um, in a strange way, it was pulling back when I needed to pull back so I could focus on my family, but still keep my toe in the water. And then it was uh, nurturing relationships because I really loved these people. I respected these people. It wasn't because I wanted anything from anybody, but I kept the relationships going. And if I hadn't kept the relationship going with Loyola Press, I'm not sure I would be at Loyola Press today or in the role as president and publisher. Um, so is that helpful in answering
That's
the
really
question?
helpful. Yeah, that's really helpful, and I love that you weaved in how you were able to accomplish the goal of being there for your kids, and still and not lose a big amount of, have a big gap in your resume. So you were able to work from home, continue doing what you loved. Obviously helpful to have that Fred Rogers name attached to you,
For sure.
and, but taking advantage of it, right? You could just as easily have said, you know what, what if there's nothing else for me to do? I'm just going to stay home. But you kept your skills up. You were able to stay in the business, and I love that this started with a conversation, right, with your mentor. Adam Packard, who I had on the show recently, said, at the end of the day, he with the most conversations wins, Dan. You just got to have conversations. People have lost the art of conversing. We want to text, we want to email, we want to say send it to me in a summary. Send me a summary. Let my AI read it. But at the end of the day, the most impactful work happens, I think, in conversation still. So before we get done, I definitely want to hear your thoughts on heroism, the fourth pillar of Jesuit leadership, energizing yourself and the people around you with heroic ambitions and a passion for excellence. I know you've got that. I see that in you. So tell us more about your implementation of heroism into your leadership style.
I think that I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. Uh, so in terms of heroism, I think the time that I was called upon to be the most heroic was during COVID.
Mm.
It was the most challenging time to be a leader that I've been through, and I hope I never have to go through anything like that again. And I'll tell you some of the things that I think I did that made things work out okay for us at Loyola Press. It was not easy, but we did it. The first thing was we were prepared. Um, I paid attention and I listened, and we anticipated that something big was going to happen. In December of that year, I called our leadership team together and I said that I needed them to work with our IT director, and they needed to um, purchase and acquire all of the equipment needed so that every single person at Loyola Press could work from home um, when they were called upon to do so. And so in late December, we had begun the process already for sending people home. On, you know, Thursday, March 12, when the governor of Illinois made the call and said all businesses in Chicago that can work from home should do so. I had prepared the staff. I told them, we kind of saw it looming. I told everyone, I said, take home your plants, take home whatever you need to take home, but and we'll still come into the office, but let's anticipate this and have a go box, so that you can just leave when I call it. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon is when he came on the news, and I turned my car around on Ashland Avenue in the middle of Chicago and went back, met with my IT director and my CAO, and I said, we're making the call. So on Friday the 13th, I was like Julie McCoy on the Love Boat with a clipboard, and every single employee came in, picked up the items that we had for them. We moved them all home. I knew it was going to be longer than a couple of weeks, but I didn't know how long. I had hoped it was only going to be a month, but in very short order, we learned that we were in a very different place.
Mhm.
So the whole world shut down. Our entire market was just gone. Kids were locked out of schools. People were not going to church, and bookstores were all closed. So I remember calling my leadership team together again about 2 or 3 weeks in, and I said, we're not going to be selling anything to anybody. Nobody's going to be buying books, but there are people locked out of their schools, and they need to be teaching these kids. So here's what we're going to do. Any textbook that's not digitized yet, I need you guys to put into our digital textbook platform. And I want the entire sales and marketing teams to be reaching out to our customers, and I want you to be giving people free digital textbooks. I want you to find them. I want you to give them free licenses through the end of June. And within 8 weeks, we had given away 75,000 free digital textbooks. I also told my leadership team, or my development team, I said, I want you guys to make an online lesson that talks about the importance of following good hygiene rules, and that there is, and it creates a sense of an integration of faith and science. And so they created this amazing digital lesson complete with an animated video. We put that out. We sent it to all our customers. Within 48 hours, there were 15,000 downloads. As far away as Kuala Lumpur, people were using these lessons. And we just pivoted. It was terrifying. I got up every single morning, and I stood and as tall as I could, and I would say to myself, be the mountain today, be the mountain. The weather's going to come, the rain is going to come, the snow is going to come, but the mountain never falls. Today, you're going to be the mountain. And to me, that was a time when I was called upon to be there for everyone, stand tall, problem solve, help our customers. All the things were required, and it was, to me, if I were to say, when was there a time that you behaved heroically, it would have, that was it.
That is such a great story, Joelle, and I was getting chills. I could just see that happening, and I think we're all called to be great, not good. And that was certainly an opportunity to just be good. And good would have been you keep the doors open, right? You don't go out of business, and maybe you keep your clients, and when things go back to normal, they're still buying from you. You went so far above and beyond. You provided you did provide less services, you provided more services during a time when everybody else was cutting back. You prepared ahead of time for something that you knew was coming. You anticipated because you probably did the analysis.
I did the analysis, and I
Yeah.
listened to the experts, and I thought, something's going on. Like, this is going to be big.
Yeah. What a fantastic story. I am so glad that you took my phone call. So big thanks to Julianne Stans, who is
Yes.
another one of your authors, and who's also on staff and who knows you. And she said, Dan, you've got to meet Joellyn. So we had her on the podcast. So you're now my third guest from Loyola Press. You know, this has been so good. We are so glad to build a relationship with Loyola Press and with you, and the work that you're doing in the world and bringing great literature. My good friend Father Adrian Cisneros says, life's too short. And I know he's quoting someone, but I'm going to give him credit. He says, life's too short to read good books. You should read great books.
I
And
agree.
you have some great books in your, two of them which we've shown today, in your library. Thank you for the work that you do, Joellyn. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Absolutely. Why not?
Thank you so much, Joellyn. I look forward to airing this episode. For those of you that are listening, I'm going to give you the standard reminder. If you like the episode, make sure you give us a thumbs up. If you want to get a hold of Joellyn, we're going to put her contact and about info in the show notes. And make sure you subscribe. We want to get as many subscribers. We want to get the message out about leading different to as many people as possible. Thank you, Joellyn, for being a different leader and for saying why not to being on the Lead Different podcast.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.